elephant in the room. We saw over the past year or so the Just Energy Transition Partnership with the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, funding roughly $20 billion even to Indonesia and $15 billion to Vietnam. Roughly half is supposed to come from private financing, so really topical for this group of people. It's looking at things like the early retirement of coal assets and funding moving towards renewable assets. So while much of the funding is agreed, really a lot of the details are still not agreed. Bankability of projects, like you said, still is a big question mark. Local content rules, guaranteeing future revenue streams. All of the problems we discussed today still exist and haven't been addressed. So it begs really the question, do you think it's going to be a success, or is it a lot of noise? Mr. Nguyen, can I start with you? Vietnam's in a really good position here, potentially. I mean, I wouldn't mind $15 billion, or if you've any going spare. What do you think? How do you even start to approach this? Where do you start to spend or allocate that kind of capital to?
Okay, first of all, we should share each other the same feeling and the same idea that energy transition is the unchangeable trend in global, and every country needs to have the suitable and effective policy to develop that trend, and to make that trend to be effectively in reality. I think it's not easy answer. Yep. The question that you just given me, that do I think that it is the success? I think that we cannot say that it will be successful or not right now, because it takes time. Mm-hmm. We need time to see it in reality. But at least it's one of the best way for every country to approach that financial resources. And you see that until now, the state budgets of each country, especially including Vietnam, is to develop the energy is very difficult. And now it depends on mostly from the international loan with a very difficult and complex procedure, and the rate is relatively high. And but the problem is that until now, the government will not anymore guarantee for the loan. So the approach to the commercial bank is more and more difficult. So that's why approaching the fund for climate change, approaching the financial fund is for the energy transition is very important, especially so for Vietnam. But now, as I mentioned before in the second session, that to get the successful energy transition, Vietnamese government needs the financial resources approximately about 120 billion US dollars, and we ourselves can do about 15% of that. Okay. So I think most of the financial resources need from the international fund. So that's why approaching the ZP is one of the best way. But to get the financial resources from international fund are facing many difficulties, as I can say following. Firstly, it needs to create the legal framework. I share the same idea with my colleagues there, that the foreign investor need a very long-term stable policy. Mm-hmm. And it's what the government, including Vietnam, need to do that. We are trying to improve our legal framework, especially the incentive or supporting policy for foreign investor in this sector, but it can be stable for long term, very transparent and predictable. Secondly, we can make a monitoring agency to be independent role, and very important to create the framework for negotiation pricing is very important, as I mentioned before. And the third one is how to create the electricity market with the competitive price. Is very important to attract the foreign investors to come into this very potential sector. And the last one is the difficulties of approaching the low-rate financial resources because the procedure for getting them is very complex. So those are some challenges and difficulties that at the side of Vietnamese government is facing when trying to approach the international financial resources. And until now, we are very happy because Vietnam is the third country following Indonesia and South Africa to approve the declare of ZEPT. And now Vietnamese government has set 4 groups to implement that. We have 4 groups, and the head of the national board is the prime minister. It means that the government is very focusing on implementing successfully the ZEPT. And that's some practice and some idea that I can share from the history of Vietnam.
Great.
Thank you.
So optimistic, lots of challenges still ahead. Well, the world is watching, so good luck.